Welcome to the Child Anxiety FAQ podcast. FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions, and I'll be answering your questions about child and teen anxiety. My name is Dawn Friedman, and I have been working with kids and families for over 30 years as a preschool teacher, parent educator, family case manager, clinical counselor, and now as the facilitator of Child Anxiety Support, a program for parents of anxious kids. All right, let's get started. And this week's question is, what do you do when a child is still as anxious, if not more anxious of something after exposure? Now, you know that our focus on child anxiety is not avoiding and going towards the things that make our child anxious in order for them to confront and cope with their anxiety. So I'm going to read the rest of the question here so we can dig into this specific example. My son, year 8, is terrified of being in the classroom as he is scared of the teacher shouting, not at him, just in general. He either can't get in the room, or when he does, he is really worried if other children start chatting as he knows the teacher will raise their voice. The thing he is scared of keeps happening, so he can't be shown that it's okay. It won't happen because it does. He has been in the situation over and over again for over a year, and the worry has gotten bigger, not smaller. How do we deal with this? Now, when she says age or year 8, I'm not sure if she means that her child is 8 years old or in 8th grade. Not that this necessarily matters, but I'm unsure about that. So let's talk about this one. Now, there's a couple things here, and one is the thing he is scared of keeps happening, so he can't be shown that it's okay. It won't happen because it does. Well, that's true. So telling a child you don't need to be scared because it won't happen is not realistic, because sometimes the things we're scared of do happen, and then it's about coping with those things. That's a shift in the way that we're looking at it. So it's not go ahead and do the scary things that's unlikely to happen, and it's more go ahead and do the scary thing because I believe you can handle it. Now, I'm curious what else might be going on here and what it is about this classroom that particularly scares this child. I am curious about who they are in particular. I can't tell if this child has anxiety in other situations, is learning to cope with anxiety in other ways. I can't tell if there are sensory issues that are going on. I am curious about their auditory sensitivity. Are they especially sensitive to big noises, and is it coming from that place? Or are they very sensitive to perceived criticism, and is it coming from that place? So I want to have a bigger picture of this child to know what else is going on. I am betting that there are other anxious things happening for this child, other sensitivities and concerns, which is not to say that there's not something going on specifically in this classroom, but I am curious what makes this child especially vulnerable. The other thing I want to know is this child safe? Is this a good teacher? Is this a good fit? Is this a good school? What has happened in this child's history that may have made them especially sensitive? However, it's easy to get trapped in that rabbit hole of there has to be a reason, and that identifying the reason will identify the way out. It's more about creating a whole big picture, because sometimes there is no reason. Sometimes the child is just anxious, is just sensitive, and other times there is a reason. And then we need to address that. This is really common in school refusal, where we're trying to figure out, is the school refusal having to do with social anxiety or separation anxiety, or is school truly a poor fit for that child? An example I will give is we had a child whose family I was working with who had a lot of big behaviors around school. And as we dug into it, we realized that the school, which was very rigid and very high pressure and very structured, was not a good fit for this particular child. Their anxiety came out as anger and behavior issues, and their anxiety was a fact. It was true, and we needed to address the anxiety, but we couldn't do that while the child was in a poor fit situation. When we addressed that, when we found ways to make the school a better fit for that child, and sometimes that might mean changing schools when families are able to do that. Sometimes it might be working with the school to create more flexibility for that child. Then we were able to address the anxiety appropriately. But if a child is constantly being triggered, then that's not going to be something we can overcome just by creating more exposures. So I don't know what's going on with this child, and I would want to know more about that. I would want to know more about their background. I would want to know more about their functioning in other areas of their life. I would want to know what the family has already tried. And I would want to know if it's really about building in more coping tools. An example might be a child who has a teacher who is loud, and that's the issue, that it's an auditory sensitivity. We might think about buying those loop earplugs. We might discuss with the school about allowing them to wear headphones, something that would decrease that auditory sensitivity. On the other hand, if it's more about being afraid of people getting in trouble or their own concerns about getting in trouble, we might create a coping plan for that child and work with them in addressing their negative cognitions that increase their anxiety. We would not want to up the avoidance if we determined the child was safe, if we determined that there wasn't sensory sensitivities, if we determined that the teacher was well-intentioned and this was truly an anxiety of the child, we would work on that child's coping skills. So the first step is that exposure and making sure that we are supporting the exposure and not getting in the way of it. And then it's about coping. So what does it mean to support exposure rather than getting in the way of it? Is sometimes the parenting pitfalls are we also have anxiety about our child's anxiety, and we end up creating more anxiety about the circumstances. An example would be a parent who really kept checking in with the child and kept unintentionally sending the message, "This is too hard for you to handle. Are you going to be okay? Because I don't know if you're going to be okay." A very sensitive child may interpret that support as a message that they're not as capable. So we would also look at that. There's a whole lot to look at. So it's not an easy answer. It's not a one and done easy answer. And this is why it's really important to tailor these messages to that specific family's needs. I try to give really good general support here and also then give you some keys and clues into where you might look further to figure out what it is that your specific child needs in these specific circumstances. All right. Thank you for tuning in this week. Remember, if you have a question you'd like me to address on the show, please go to childanxietysupport.com/question and you can post it there. Hopefully, I'll address it on a future episode. I also might email you for more details, and you are welcome to respond with that or not. I also wanted to let you know that I have a webinar called Tell Me It Will Be Okay, How to Talk to Your Anxious Child About Their Anxiety, and you can register for that at childanxietysupport.com/webinar. That's free for you. I just want you to check it out and let me know if it's helpful. If you'd like to learn more about me and my program and see if maybe I can help your family, please visit childanxietysupport.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.